There is a force in the human body that ancient physicians called the most valuable substance a person can possess. Dhanvantari, regarded as the founding father of Indian medicine, was asked by his students, after years of teaching, to name the single most important secret of the healing arts. He paused. Then he said, "Brahmacharya is the one medicine that destroys diseases, decay, and death. It is Amrita, the nectar of immortality. I cure the incurable by saluting Brahmacharya first." He was not talking about a pill. He was talking about how you live. This is a summary of Practice of Brahmacharya by Sri Swami Sivananda, one of the most direct, unflinching books ever written on sexual energy, self-mastery, and the link between physical discipline and spiritual power. If you have ever felt scattered, drained, or quietly aware that something inside you works against your own goals, this book has something real to say tonight. If you want a summary like this every week, subscribing takes one tap. Here is the problem the book names plainly. Most people live as though the body runs on willpower alone, but the body runs on energy. And the single greatest drain on that energy, the one that goes unexamined because it is too uncomfortable to discuss, is the misuse of sexual force. Sivananda, an Indian Swami and physician writing in the early 20th century, spent decades watching people struggle, fail spiritually, and age faster than they should. His diagnosis was always the same: not laziness, not bad luck, wasted vital energy. The book's argument is built on one term: Brahmacharya. And before anything else, Sivananda defines it precisely, because most people use the word incorrectly. Brahmacharya is not simply celibacy. The word literally means conduct that leads to Brahman, to the highest state of consciousness. It refers to complete self-restraint over the sexual impulse in thought, word, and deed, not just the physical act. Thought is the real act, Sivananda writes. A desire entertained long enough is, spiritually speaking, the same as the act itself. He identifies 8 specific breaks in Brahmacharya, called the 8 forms of Mithuna. They are looking at another person with desire, touching with desire, playful flirtation, speaking privately with lustful intent, praising another's physical qualities in the mind, allowing sexual fantasy to form into a clear intention, moving toward another person with the aim of gratification, and the physical act itself. The first 7 do not cause an outward loss of energy, but the semen, as Sivananda puts it, is separated from the blood and begins its downward movement. The subtle drain is already happening. Most people monitor only the 8th break and consider themselves disciplined. The book says that is not nearly enough. This distinction between physical brahmacharya and mental brahmacharya runs through everything that follows. You cannot have one without eventually building the other. But you must start with the body, then purify the mind. The science behind the practice. Sivananda takes the question of sexual energy seriously as a physical matter, not just a moral one. The body produces a vital fluid, semen in men, the corresponding vital force in women through the ovaries, and this substance, when preserved and transmuted through yoga and meditation, rises upward in the nervous system and is converted into ojas shakti. Ojas is the word for radiant vital force stored in the brain. When this conversion happens, something measurable changes in a person. The eyes become clear and bright. The voice deepens and steadies. The memory sharpens. The capacity to focus extends dramatically. Sivananda points to Mahatma Gandhi as a living example. Gandhi practiced brahmacharya with sustained discipline, and the result was a presence that moved an entire nation without weapons. People followed him, not only for his arguments, but because of something they felt standing near him. That quality, Sivananda argues, was the direct product of conserved and transmuted vital energy. The loss of semen, by contrast, produces a predictable cascade: poor memory, weak eyesight, depression after the act, restless sleep, diminished will. The man who cannot concentrate, whose ambitions stay vague, who starts things and does not finish. Sivananda would ask him one question before any other. You know what the question is? The practical takeaway here is simple but demanding. Begin treating the conservation of vital energy as a health practice, not a moral obligation. Sivananda is not interested in shame. He is interested in results. The body is an instrument. You can keep it tuned or you can let it run down. The choice determines almost everything else. Sex is built in the imagination first. One of the book's most useful chapters deals with where the sexual impulse actually originates. It does not begin in the body. It begins in the mind, in a look that lingers a moment too long, in a thought entertained rather than dismissed, in a chain of imagination that seems harmless at first and grows into something that controls you by the end. Sivananda calls this the working of the sex impulse. He describes it as a force that begins like a bubble and becomes a wave. The bubble, if caught early, can be dissolved with almost no effort. The wave, once formed, can capsize a person who has been practicing self-control for years. This is not a metaphor. Rishi Vishwamitra, one of the most celebrated ascetics in Indian history, a man who had practiced severe austerity for decades, was swept away in a single afternoon by a celestial nymph sent to break his meditation. Jerome, the early Christian scholar, wrote from the desert describing how, surrounded by nothing but heat and silence, vivid images of Rome still played through his mind without stopping. These stories serve one purpose. No one is above temptation, and the safeguard is not confidence in your current strength. The safeguard is the practice itself, daily, consistent, not abandoned because you feel strong. The moment you believe you are safe is often the moment the trouble begins. The practical instruction: do not wait for the wave. Address the bubble. When the thought arises, move toward something else. A mantra, a prayer, physical work, study. The thought will not fight you if you do not feed it. Feed it, and it will fight you with everything it has. What you eat shapes what you desire. This section of the book surprises people who expect only philosophy and prayer. Diet, Sivananda writes, plays a direct and measurable role in the strength of sexual desire. Meat, fish, and eggs stimulate rajas, the quality of agitation and passion. He asks you to notice the difference between a cow and a tiger. One grazes, moves slowly, and is easily calm. The other is almost always either hunting, resting after hunting, or preparing to hunt again. The food is not incidental to this difference. He calls the ideal food for Brahmacharya sattvic: grains, vegetables, legumes, fruits, and nuts. These calm the nervous system and reduce the heat in the body that drives restless desire. He warns specifically against overeating at night. A loaded stomach before sleep puts direct pressure on the organs associated with sexual function, and is, he says, the most common cause of nocturnal emissions in young men otherwise practicing self-restraint. Fasting, used deliberately and occasionally, is described as one of the 10 great practices of yoga. Not because it punishes the body, but because it rests the internal organs and quiets the mind. When you fast and meditate on the same day, Sivananda says, The quality of the silence is unusually clear. That experience, even once, changes your relationship to appetite permanently. The takeaway is practical. Notice what you eat after 6 p.m. Notice the quality of your mind the morning after a light dinner versus a large one. The body is already giving you the data. Suppression is not the answer. Sublimation is. This is the chapter most people need and most often misread. Sivananda is not asking you to crush desire. He is asking you to redirect it. These are different operations, and the failure to understand the difference ruins many sincere practitioners. Suppression, forcing the body into rigid discipline while the mind dwells obsessively on what it is denying itself, does not work. Sivananda is honest about this. He writes of a great saint of repute who fell precisely because his energy had only been suppressed, not transformed. When he was in close proximity to women who regarded him as a spiritual figure, the hidden desire surfaced with a force that years of surface-level control could not stop. Sublimation is different. The sexual energy is not blocked. It is redirected upward, into creative work, meditation, prayer, study, service to others. It does not disappear. It becomes something else. It becomes the brightness in the eyes that people notice when they walk into a room. It becomes the force behind a sentence that lands differently than ordinary sentences. It becomes the clarity that lets a person sit with a difficult problem for 3 hours without losing focus. Sivananda writes, just as oil rises up a wick and burns with light, the preserved vital energy rises through the nervous system and becomes ojas, mental and spiritual luminosity stored in the brain. The brahmachari does not have less energy than other people. He has the same energy pointed in one direction. The instruction here is to fill the space. You cannot remove desire without giving the mind something of equal intensity to move toward. Japa, repetition of a mantra or the name of God, is the most direct method Sivananda recommends. Not because it is magical, but because it occupies the mind completely. A mind fully engaged in something it finds meaningful has no room for the images that would otherwise fill it. The life of the person who succeeds. Sivananda saves his most vivid writing for the description of what Brahmacharya actually produces in a human being over time. He writes, a true Brahmachari has a magnetic aura around his face. His eyes are lustrous. His voice is sweet. He has tremendous energy, a clear brain, gigantic willpower, bold understanding, retentive memory. He can influence people by speaking just a few words, or by his presence alone. He controls anger. He can move the world. These are not poetic promises. They are descriptions of what the human nervous system produces when its vital resources are not regularly depleted. Memory improves because the brain receives nourishment it otherwise loses. Concentration deepens because the scattered force of desire no longer pulls attention sideways. Emotional steadiness grows because the cycle of craving, gratification, and the depression that follows has been broken. Sivananda names specific figures he regards as examples of this power. Shankara, the 8th century philosopher who reformed the entire tradition of Vedanta and died at 32, having done the work of 10 lifetimes. Swami Dayananda, who is said to have stopped the carriage of a Maharaja with his bare hands. Jesus, who healed with touch and word. Not one of them was married. Not one of them wasted what he had. He does not ask you to become a monk. He asks you to understand what is possible in a human body when its foundational energy is preserved and directed, and to ask yourself honestly whether the life you are living reflects that understanding. The open question the book leaves with you. Early in the book, Sivananda says something that stayed with me through every chapter that followed. He says, "A man who completely eradicates lust and is established in mental brahmacharya is Brahman or God himself. The goal is not comfort. The goal is that. Most people will not reach it." Sivananda knows this. He writes with compassion for the householder, for the person already married, for the person who has failed again and again. He says, "Even a little brahmacharya has value. Even one day of restraint registers on what he calls the spiritual thermometer. The movement is always available. The question is not whether you can live the way the great ascetics lived. It is simpler. Is the energy you have right now, your attention, your memory, your drive, your capacity to build something real, is it being used for the life you actually want? Or is it leaking through habits you have never examined because no one gave you permission to examine them? Sivananda gives you that permission. He has been doing it for 100 years. If something in this summary stayed with you, drop it in the comments, and a like helps more than you know.